The most striking truth about passion bombing is that it doesn't work by making you feel loved. It works by making you feel like part of a revolution.
Now, we've all heard of love bombing, right? But there's a much faster, high-velocity variant that completely bypasses the heart and goes straight for your ambition. We tend to think a manipulator wants to make you dependent on their affection, but in these high-pressure worlds, they use your own biological drive for meaning, for destiny, to turn you into an instrument for their vision.
And that brings us to the central mystery we're going to solve in this explainer. It's the core paradox of something called grandiosity induction. And all that means is the process of making you feel incredibly special. It's that exact moment when your highest aspirations are twisted into the very mechanism of your own psychological capture.
Okay, let's dive in. We are going to deconstruct this entire cognitive heist, piece by piece. First, we'll tackle that revolution paradox. Then, we'll see exactly how your ambition gets hijacked. We'll map out the three-phase capture, unpack the psychology that makes us surrender, arm you with tools to get your sovereignty back, and finally, we'll deliver a verdict. Is this a mission, or is it a crime? So let's start right there, with the fundamental difference between the manipulation we think we know and this much more sophisticated version that doesn't target our need for love, but our highest, most ambitious goals. This right here crystallizes the entire strategic shift. Look, on the left, you've got classic love bombing. It targets the heart. The goal is to make you dependent on their affection. But passion bombing, on the right, that's a whole different beast. It targets your ambition. The goal isn't just dependence, it's your total mobilization. It doesn't want to make you feel needed, it wants to make you feel destined.
And that leads to the ultimate goal, aspirational hijacking. And listen, this isn't just about getting you excited about some big idea. No. It's a systematic process. It's a careful calibration of your sense of purpose until it perfectly serves someone else's agenda. Your personal sovereignty, your right to your own life, gets methodically replaced by their grand plan. It's the difference between someone helping you climb your mountain and someone convincing you to abandon your mountain to carry their gear up theirs.
So we see the goal, but how does this hijacking actually happen? Let's get into the toolkit, the specific psychological tactics they use to just bypass your critical filters and get inside your head. The primary tool is something behavioral science calls visionary mirroring. A manipulator listens and they pinpoint your deepest, most private hopes, the ones you barely admit to yourself. Then, they masterfully reflect them back to you, but reframed as a shared, world-changing destiny. Imagine telling some visionary CEO you want to make an impact, and they look at you and say, "I knew it. You're not here to just write code. You're here to build a new internet with me." You see this pattern everywhere: disruptive startups, high-demand movements, even in so-called power couple dynamics. Now, this mirroring works because of two initial hooks. First, there's the significance hook, that intoxicating belief that this person finally sees the real you, a special potential that everyone else just missed. And that's followed almost immediately by aspirational vertigo. It's a literal feeling of dizziness, where your old life, your old goals, suddenly seem so small and meaningless compared to this epic future you've just been offered. These two hooks work together to make you feel uniquely chosen, and like there's no going back. And here's where it gets really dangerous. Your brain can literally be trained to sacrifice its own boundaries just to get another hit of feeling extraordinary. This is the pivot point. This is where you go from being a sovereign individual with your own goals to being an instrument, a tool, hyper-focused on fulfilling their grand plan. Personal boundaries that used to feel essential now just feel like petty little obstacles to greatness. Over time, this creates a psychological state called identity fusion. Your personal identity literally merges with their mission. So let's say a startup employee starts to believe the company's success is their personal success. Any criticism of the company feels like a personal attack. It becomes almost impossible to doubt the leader without feeling like you are betraying the future itself. And the result? You start to feel guilty for wanting a personal life, for needing to sleep. Your own ambition has been turned into a leash. So the crucial point is this shift right here. You move from active collaboration, where both of you grow and your goals get bigger, to passive submission, where you are basically required to drop your entire life just to keep their vision alive. That passion they ignited in you, it wasn't a gift. It becomes a fortress, a cage for your identity, making sure that you stay because leaving feels like you're betraying the entire world. Okay, so now that we get the tools, let's break down the actual process. Research shows there's a systematic pattern to this. a blueprint that unfolds in 3 very distinct phases.
And this sequence is pretty brilliant, in a dark way. It starts with their vision, which is designed to trigger your ambition. Then that ambition is used to trigger your psychological lock-in. Let's break down each phase.
It all begins with the insight phase. This is where the bomber seems to decode your hidden genius. But what they're really doing is testing your grandiosity threshold. Basically, how susceptible are you to the promise of greatness? For you, the target, this feels amazing. People often say they feel electrified in this stage, like they finally met the one person who sees them not just for who they are, but for who they could become.
Then comes phase 2, creating the shared enemy. And this is a critical move to isolate you. Anyone in your life who might see a red flag, your friends, your family, they get systematically rebranded as small-minded doubters who just don't get it. This triggers our deep-seated in-group, out-group biology. You get this intoxicating feeling of being part of an elite, misunderstood group on a secret mission. It makes you feel like only the bomber truly understands you, which just deepens your dependency.
And this is where the trap slams shut. Phase 3, the martyrdom phase. The bomber starts demanding extreme tests of commitment. You sacrifice your time, your money, your sleep. But here's the twist. They then use your sacrifice as proof of your shared destiny. Our brains are hardwired to find meaning through sacrifice. It's called effort justification, and this phase exploits that drive completely. Your exhaustion becomes proof of your devotion. And the end result of all this is a state of executive surrender. You essentially give up your own decision-making power. Your brain has been reconditioned. You've been trained to see your own personal needs as a sign of mediocrity, and to see total exhaustion as a badge of honor, a sign of excellence. And in that state, it becomes incredibly hard to hold on to your own perspective or to even recognize you're being exploited. So why is this so effective? Let's get into the psychological vulnerabilities, the backdoors in our own minds that make this whole heist possible. And this isn't about weakness. It's about how the human brain is wired to search for meaning. It really boils down to 3 core psychological factors that this whole system is built on. First, the manipulator's goal of total resource mobilization. Second, our natural tendency towards something called charismatic attachment. And third, our own deep-seated need for high significance, which, let's be honest, is often just a mask for the fear of a meaningless life. Let's unpack that. Look, for the manipulator, the end game is total resource mobilization. If they can own your sense of purpose, they get total leverage over your time, your energy, your money. You'll do almost anything to avoid what feels like the shame of being ordinary or failing the mission. On our end, our brains are wired for that charismatic attachment. We have a biological tendency to just suspend our disbelief when we're faced with a confident leader with a grand vision. We want to believe. And finally, this whole dynamic preys on our fundamental human need to matter. The promise of making history is a powerful drug against the fear of living an unnoticed life. A passion bomber offers you the ultimate shortcut to feeling like your life has meaning. Okay, we've seen the architecture of the trap and the psychological buttons it pushes. So how do you defend your own cognitive territory? How do you protect yourself? Let's equip you with some security systems, some mental frameworks to detect and prevent this kind of heist. We're going to look at 2 powerful, super practical awareness tools. This isn't about becoming cynical, it's about becoming clear. They're designed to help you tell the difference between genuine, healthy inspiration and sophisticated, disguised extraction. The first tool is the ownership audit. You ask yourself 3 simple but very revealing questions. First, whose dream am I actually building? In a healthy dynamic, their vision expands your own. In an exploitative one, it replaces it. Second, who benefits? With real inspiration, you both grow. In extraction, only the visionary grows. And finally, what's my role here? Am I an active collaborator, or have I become a passive instrument? This audit really helps you figure out if you have any real equity in the dream. The second tool is mundane anchor awareness. Think of this as a practical reset button. It just means intentionally spending time in boring, mission-free environments. Go for a quiet walk, do the laundry, browse the library. Why does this work? Because passion bombing keeps your nervous system jacked up in a state of high arousal. These mundane anchors calm that system down, letting you step away from the manufactured intensity and get your own perspective back before that identity fusion thing really takes hold. And ultimately, reclaiming your sovereignty boils down to accepting this fundamental truth. You do not have to be special to be whole. You don't need to save the world to deserve to live your life. Internalizing this is the key. It breaks the manipulator's spell,
because their entire game is built on you needing their validation to feel extraordinary.
Okay, let's bring our investigation to a close. After deconstructing the blueprint, the tools, and the psychology of passion bombing, it's time to deliver the final, crucial takeaway from all this.
The first and most important verdict is this: your mind is private territory. Your consciousness, your ambitions, your dreams, they belong to you. No one has the right to set up camp on that land without your explicit, informed, and ongoing consent. Awareness is your first line of defense.
And that leads directly to the core lesson here. Real purpose, a true calling, it doesn't diminish you, it amplifies you. It doesn't ask you to sacrifice your selfhood. It should help you become more of who you already are. A genuine mission expands you. It does not erase you.
So let's be absolutely clear. A mission that requires you to erase yourself, to give up your sovereignty, to become a mere instrument for someone else's grand plan, that is not a calling, it's a crime.
And so we end with this question for you to take with you. As you move through your work, your relationships, your life, just ask yourself, honestly and often, whose vision are you building?